Drivers, how are you doing? Welcome to the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, where I mainly go over and look at loan plays and strategies specifically designed for GPPs. This is a show of people who are already informed on daily fantasy sports and how these contests operate. If you have any questions related to NASCAR that isn't a stupid question, feel free to shoot it my way at BrandonCruzDFS. Most importantly, take everything you hear with a grain of salt and use your best judgment when making entries. Additionally, if you have a gambling addiction, that's not my problem. Check your sensitive feelings at the door. This is going to be a different type of video podcast than I normally do. I'm not going to be talking about a specific race here, but I'm going to be talking about lineup construction and tournament selection and everything we need to look at as DFS NASCAR players going forward in the year, since we're not going to have practice or qualifying for any of the series going forward. And just stuff that I'm taking from what I've done since the COVID return back in May or June, whenever it was, and how I've had to radically change the way I approach contests and stuff. So let's get in it. So and I actually got a script here, so I'll be reading a lot of what I wrote out earlier. But anyway, we'll get into it. So looking at the no practice, no qualifying for the rest of the year. I don't know about you, but I really struggled when NASCAR first returned compared to how my year started and how it was last year, in a sense of, maybe I was going off of gut feelings more, or I was anticipating certain drivers to be better and then certain drivers to be worse. Like Kyle Busch, I didn't expect Kyle Busch to struggle nearly as much as he has this year, but we found out that, hey, he's a driver that really uses practice and what the car has, and really works with his team throughout the weekend to get it race ready. Since we don't have that, we just have the race. We see that, it takes him a good portion of the race to get everything under his feet, everything feeling the way he wants to. So like that stuff I didn't expect, and it's due to a few other things. It was me still entering a ton of lineups. The chalk has never been chalkier now. The lack of practice data to look over. Like I said, some drivers are more dependent on practice than others. Everybody's looking at the same information: starting lineup, recent history, lap data. I mean, everybody has the same information right now. And as stupid as it seems, I spent about the first month and a week still approaching these slates with the same mentality and with my same system that I had before, which is, and I really didn't talk about this a whole lot. I actually recorded a video about lineup construction, but I figured people wouldn't like it, or I figured people weren't interested in that, so I never posted it. I suppose I can do it again next year, because it's not this strategy that has worked for me in the past, but this is what I used to do. What I would do is I would build about 80 lineups. I'd run an optimizer, go with different combinations, different cores, write the lineups down, and then I'd find about 50 lineups that I like. So I'd enter those 50, like all 50 of them. I'd enter them in the 25, the 50 max, the mini max, the 10 cent, the $1, and then finding my best, 10 lineups in that 50 lineup core or whatever. And I'd enter those 10 lineups in the main GPPs, the 3, the 4, the 5, the $10, the $20, whatever, those main GPPs of each week were. That's what I would do. I didn't always follow this strategy, but that's just, the basic principle of what I would do. I'd still always make at least, 40 to 50 lineups a week and per race, and then, dissect which ones I liked. And I usually have a good feel for airing out, or, my good gut plays, my good pivots. I usually have a good idea of what people are going to do in that sense. So usually I can look at a lineup and just see how it's going to perform. I can pretty much project how it should finish, and pretty accurately as well. Anyway, so this worked extremely well for me before COVID. I'd have a player pool of around 24 people that was spread out between all the lineups, and I'd probably have about a core of 8 drivers that I'd build around, swapping in and out drivers here and there. I didn't really have a great ROI at this time, or doing this, but I'd usually hit about once a month. That would cover me for a couple months on end. For example, I used the February win at Auto Club, because that's the last one I really posted about. And I think it was $2,600 or $2,800 back in February, and that covered all my bills up till May. And so anything I won between February and May, I just put into savings, put towards bills and everything. That's why I really haven't struggled a whole lot during the whole COVID crisis, because I've been doing, I've luckily been enough to where I didn't have to go work or anything. I just kind of stayed home and just relax. But anyway, so that's how that's how I usually went about this stuff. Let's see, where was I at? But yeah, so that was the main reason I continued this route, because I was hitting at least once a month or getting a big win. Not even in NASCAR too. It's the same thing. I mean, I play a lot of NBA tiers, and I usually have a win of $1,000 or more per month there. I don't really talk about my winnings a whole lot, but that's how I'm able to sustain, not working a real job, just living off of this stuff, or like doing little odds and ends stuff and selling things online. But anyway, so that's that. However, I ran into many issues trying to implement this strategy at the return of NASCAR due to that list of issues and points I made earlier. Starting last week of June, I took a step back and asked myself, what is going on? I mean, look, Brandon, I mean, my cores are not working. I'm having issues with these lineups, and I did horrible in the iRacing stuff, even though I covered it extensively. I was the only one covering that stuff, and I projected what would happen, and I had good projections for people, but the lineups I would enter were horrible. Looking back, hindsight's 2020. I mean, these are horrible lineups. So I was like, what is going on? What is going on? Oh, and note, I mean, this will be a bit different with the MLB, NBA, NFL returning later this year. I'm sure we're not going to have as many people playing NASCAR, but I think this podcast is still important to get out there. So, I think the main reason that was happening was because NASCAR is the only sports. There's an influx of players. There's an influx of content creators, sites, lineup sellers, and coverage on this. I mean, it was oversaturated. It was wild. So what did this cause? It caused the difference. The difference of content began to shrink. And what I mean by that is usually, and I don't pay for any premium content or anything, but usually, and I'm not going to name any sites, but usually, if you're subscribed to a big name site or even like a mid-tier site, they have premium articles that's behind a paywall. And normally, those articles have some good details in them. Well, now, since everybody's running with the same data, starting grid, everybody's seeing these crazy salaries that DK and FanDuel are putting out on the drivers, and everybody's talking about them. There's not a big difference by that. I mean, usually people, or what we're seeing are people gravitating towards the same plays, the same players, even the same information. I mean, in the beginning, and that's mainly why I stopped listening to a lot of videos and stopped reading so many articles right now, is because I would just read the same thing no matter what site it was. It was always like, oh, you got to play, I can't think of a driver right now that pops in my mind, but Ryan Preece, before he got on this stretch of just wrecking every week, it was always like, oh, Ryan Preece is a value play. Ty Dillon's a value play. Ryan Blaney's going to lead the most amount of laps. Kevin Harvick's going to win. Denny Hamlin this week. Yada, yada, yada. I mean, it was the same stuff in every article, every podcast, every video talked about it. And, I mean, with that, I mean, a lot of those big sites lost, like, their quote-unquote hidden stats or their real selling point or their secret strategies or whatever. I mean, some had data that others, either didn't see or didn't really talk about or were too lazy to find, or, disguise some of their rankings as just, lap speed or average position during the race. And whatever the case, as that, like, that was just broken as, wait, hold on. So, anyway, yeah, so that was just broken in this situation. I mean, just the main edge that any of the big touts or any of the big guys out there had were pretty much gone. And so what did that cause? It caused a lot of people to use the same lineups. It caused just a shift through the industry of just a huge chalk. Regardless if they were good or bad plays, ownership was through the roof and consistently concentrated around certain plays. That's how it's been since NASCAR has returned. Now, this really hurts the ROI in the GPPs that I was in. Let's see, is this when? Let's see. Okay, so Let me see. Okay, yeah, that's what I read. So it hurt the return on investment that, for example, I think they have the $12 GPP. I think that's a big one now. But like, for example, like I've won that GPP, and I split that before with, I think it was like 50 or 60 people, and that like 50 grand to first ended up being like 2,800 to first or whatever, and it was tied between people and whatnot. And I mean, that's still a good return on value. I mean, and I've won other contests where it's $1,000, 700 or whatever. I mean, that's still a good return. But let me give you this example. So now, like, say if you enter 20 lineups into a $10 contest, that's a $200 investment that you're in, that you're involved in. We all know those big contests pay really, really poorly unless you finish, say, the top 2%, or like you have to finish towards the top if you're max entering. And so the more entries you have used to, the better chance you had of, like one lineup carrying your whole investment. Because what you do is when you max enter, or you enter a lot of lineups into the big $12 contest, or any sport for that matter, you're just hoping one of those lineups take it down or finish up front. Otherwise, you're going to lose money. Let's see here. Now, with so many duplicated lineups, you can have a lineup that finishes in the top 2, top 1% of points, but you tie with so many people that you still lose money. I've seen people enter contests since NASCAR has returned, win, and they still don't profit, or they have such a slim margin it's not even worth the time. And I see this through Twitter and people posting like memes like, oh, well, I did all this for $50. It's like you put $2,500 on the line to win, 25, 30. I mean, used to that was bad. Now that's horrible. I mean, you're lucky if you do that. Now, like with me, I was still able to play low-owned guys, but I would still tie with people. Just instead of having the same lineup with 800 people, now I would have the same lineup with 65 people. And why is this important too? Well, say if there's a lineup that wins or takes down a GPP, or finishes up high, and 800 people have it in a mini max, that's 800 positions being taken up by that. It's not just one lineup separating you. That's 800 positions, and when money is paid out per position and where you are, I mean that's 800 places. I mean, it's crazy. And the lineups may be separated by 0.25 DK points or whatnot, but just the sheer amount of spots that you're missing out on, or that is passing you, or you're stuck behind, I mean, that's huge. It doesn't matter if it's in the Cup, Xfinity, Truck Series. I mean, all series are having this problem right now of just lineups being duplicated. So what did I start doing? I started looking more at the high stakes single entry GPPs, or at least the smaller field GPPs. So before I was spending around, $120 to $300 per slate. I mean, per race, pretty much, depending on which series it was and what was going on and how I felt about it. But I was like, dude, this isn't working anymore. If I can afford this, then I can afford the risk of, $100 single entry, a $55 single entry, and entry into the $24 Rainbow Warrior tournament, especially if they're single entries. I mean, I can afford that. If I enter those with the money I was spending, mass entering, or at least entering, 20, 15, 10 lineups in like a $10 or $12. I mean, I'm basically saving money by doing this. And I'm avoiding those huge contests with the massive entries. I'm avoiding the stupid chalk and the pivots. Even pivots were highly owned. Like a pivot isn't a pivot if it's 18% owned. It's so yeah. So what am I getting at? the main point that I want to make is that I would suggest to you, if it's in your budget, and normally I don't care about budgets because you can spend as much as you want. If you want to bet your retirement on this shit, go right ahead. I don't care one way or another. I think it just makes everything more exciting if you're, betting your mortgage and all your bills on, Kyle Larson or whoever, finishing top 15. But I think this is a point where you really got to consider, maybe changing up the contest that you're entering. For example, let me talk you through right now in the Truck Series. So I'm recording this Friday, January 24th, right after the Truck Series ended at Kansas. I entered the $33, the $22. Those are the big contests that I did. I did a couple double ups because I saw some overlay that I liked, and I entered the $8 Octane, the 20,000 to first. So let's compare these two. Let's compare that and the $33 one here. So let me open this up to you. So I'm looking at the $12, 20,000 to first contest, and this didn't even fill up all the way, but this contest had a total of 12,687 entries in it. First place paid $20,000. $12 is given out to 3,705 or 3,705 on your positions. My lineup scored 256.75, and I finished 1,809th. That's where I finished in this contest. So I walked away with a solid $12. Hey, good for me. Well, I look at the $33 one, which I did, and I guess I could just, I'll just show it to you here. I don't know why I'm talking over it. As you can see, my balance is here because I just withdrew, and you can see all my stat models and stuff open. But I mean, look where these are. I mean, I finished here, it's not hard. I mean, I just made sure I got a dominator in the race. But then if I go to the $33 one, I finished, let's check out the payouts here. And I think this is why I always talk about payouts in the DFS Tavern stuff as well. Because this one's only 353. You don't have to fight nearly as many people. I think it's either 25 or 26 or 24% payout. All you gotta do is finish top 86. You get $50 back. Here with that same lineup, I got $12 back, and I got, what is that? A 0.14 or times 8. What is it? 8 times? I don't know. I'm stupid. I just went blank. I'm tired. Either way, I put $8 in, basically made $4 profit. Here, I put $33 in. I ended up, bringing back, winning, quote unquote $70. It's not that, but I mean, just the return on value is better. I understand I'm paying more, but this is money that I would usually enter in, like, having 4 or 6 lineups in the $8 one. And so I'm not spending nearly as much money as I was, and I'm having a much better return on my investment by doing this. So I mean, I wanted to bring that up to you. And if you look at single entries and stuff like that, the higher ones, which I've done in the past, but I haven't really considered doing it, full time or really focusing on it. It's harder to fade chalk I'll say, let's do $100 contest for an example. It's much harder to fade chalk in a single entry $100 lineup because, that's your only lineup in that. If you fade the chalk, it either works or you don't make money. Same thing with the pivot. You either make that pivot and it works out, or you just don't win money doing that. And that's the same. I guess it's the same argument to where people say, "Oh, well, if you max enter the Millionaire Maker in football, of course you're going to win." You don't do that, and it's the same thing because I've seen people say, "Oh, I've had better lineups in the $8 one. I should just enter that in the $100 one and walk away with $2,000." Well, I mean, do it. I mean, it's hard. It's not. I mean, it's difficult. You got to have a lot of confidence in your lineups. When you're playing more expensive contests like I've been doing for about the last let's say month, I think. I don't find it nearly as stressful because I just know, hey, either this lineup works or it doesn't. Um, but the chalk is there. Like, let's talk about this $33 one again. I mean, Austin Hill, the guy who dominated and won the race, 22% owned. Matt Craft owns 46. Christian Eckes was 60% owned. I mean, he was on the lead, and this was the same story that happened with Harvick in the Kansas race yesterday, where Harvick started on pole, and he ends up being quote unquote bust because he doesn't win and he doesn't lead a whole lot of laps. But so many people have him in these smaller contests, so you can still easily cash with these guys. You just don't need them to wreck. Make one pivot and you're pretty much good to go. It's not nearly as wild. Like, you don't need that big of a home run like you do in a $15,000-$20,000 tournament to take it down. You can just pivot one or two places and you'll be fine. But anyway, so I wanted to bring that up to you. I wanted to talk to you about that. I think COVID has really had an impact on how we need to approach the NASCAR DFS industry and spectrum, and the both websites and all that type of stuff. It's something that I really haven't seen anybody talk about in this aspect, but it's an adjustment that I've had to make, and I've had a much better time than when NASCAR first returned. And I don't talk about my winnings a whole lot, but today I basically made $100. I withdrew $100 yesterday from the Cup Series, and I basically just played with money that I had won yesterday, because I withdrew money the previous week. I mean these contests I think they're safer. I think they're easier. You still need optimizers. You still need to do research, which is why you got to go to racewiththeprize.com to get the fancy NASCAR spreadsheet that I use, and you need to be using as well. But you still got to do your research. You got to really do your research. But I just feel that these are safer investments. And I know it's out of some people's price range, or it might not be. But I would highly advise, stop playing that $12, stop playing that $8, stop playing the huge GPPs this year. I'll keep entering, probably my single lineup in them, but max entering probably more than 5 or something. I don't see the value in that anymore for this year. I'll do it next year when practice returns. But for the time being, I think that's just that's so much more risky. I'm a guy who has my risk tolerance is through the roof. I'm just throwing shit around. I don't really. I want to make money, and I usually do, but if there's a low on play and nobody else is going to go for it, I'm the first guy to put money on that. But doing that now with just the amount of duplicated lineups and stuff, and I talked about it a little bit last week in my video, but I'll talk about it here because this is more of a universal. You could probably listen to this at any point in the season. But what I'm seeing primarily right now in these huge contests is that there's a core of about 3 to 4 drivers. It's usually 2. It's 2 to 3 mainly, but then I see 4, throughout the contest, that every lineup shares, and that's due to the starting grids. That's due to the prices on DraftKings, because basically what DraftKings is doing right now is you have to play the guy starting pole, unless he's a bad driver. Or you have to play the guys starting in the top 4, whoever the good drivers are there. And then, 5th through, 10th is usually a dead zone. And then due to grading by points and everything, usually 11th through 24th offer place differential. There could be good drivers that are just getting bad pill draws from that, so they're gridding, 18th or something. So you have, like, let's say, for example, a Kyle Busch starting 19th, where he's obviously a great play and you need to go to him. And then usually 24th through 30th or 31st is just no man's land, because it's a bunch of Rick Ware cars drawing way better than what they should perform, or offering little to no value in lineup construction. And then you look at 31st to 40th and usually have Ryan Preece or Timmy Hill or JJ Yaley, which on note, like JJ Yaley is overperforming this year. Like in the cars that he's running, that's crazy. But you usually have him, Corey LaJoie, BJ McLeod starting last, Timmy Hill back there. And so you're really limited in the drivers you can choose. And that's why we're just seeing so many duplicated lineups. That's why we're seeing so many articles on different sites sounding the same. That's why if you watch YouTube videos, it's the same guys talking about the same people, or not the same content creators, but it's all the content creators, focusing on like, 2 to 3, oh, this guy could lead or dominate. And then you got, these two guys are good place differential. And then you got 2 good value plays here. And then every lineup is just built around, those 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 guys that are really hammered. And that's it. And really any pivots you make either need to have just an outrageously good run, or you need chalk to just wreck, or you need a wreck fest for these guys to finish far above of where they should finish. And it's just, that's not fun, man. I've already explained before that I've become, not cynical, but I've become really annoyed with how this year has gone because of the whole COVID stuff and the way NASCAR DFS has been. But yeah, in terms of the tournaments, I think that has to be looked at as well. It's just not viable. I don't think it's good investments right now to enter those big contests. And that's my main point. Whether you're entering the $3, whether you're entering the 12, the 1, forget that. And I don't know. I don't know. I know I approach everything different, and I know I'm pretty against the grain for most people because I don't play a whole lot of cash at all. The only time I ever play double ups is when there's overlay, like when I looked at my TV, or when I looked at the screen right now, when I shared it on there, there's a double up in there, and that's because there was overlay, and so instead of 22 guys, it was only 10. In that situation, I'll try and enter double ups there, but I never ever play cash, and cash has been horrible. I'm trying to keep this under 30 minutes, but I'll talk about cash here. If you think tournaments are bad, cash is freaking terrible. Cash is worse than tournaments right now because everybody plays the same guys. It's horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. If you got a 100-man 50-50 and you have, let's say 55 of those lineups share 3 or 4 drivers because it's a cash and you're just kind of playing safe plays. Those lineups, it just skews the whole 50-50. It's either those guys do well and those 50 lineups finish there, or they don't and just half the tournament's gone, or half that contest is dead in the water. It's bad. And so I just wanted to talk to you about that. I just wanted to put that out there, at least say what I've been doing to really improve. And I've had a fantastic run in this month of July. It's been one of the most consistently profitable months I've had in recent memory. And it's just because I changed the way I was approaching stuff. And so hopefully that this helps you kind of look back and see, oh, well, maybe I should approach things differently, or maybe I should move some of my what is it? Not my budget, but what is it called? I just went blank. Your pool, the money you play. I just went blank on it, but the money you play with. If you're the type of guy who keeps throwing money in those, the big GPPs, I think it'd be worth, try it out a week, see how it goes, but enter a single entry or enter one of the more expensive entries, but with less field, and see how that goes. I think that's worth an experiment to try. Because I don't know, and then even being in the DFS Tavern Discord, I see guys enter 1 or 2 lineups in the 3 or the 10, and they have better lineups than I do, and they're making far less money than I am, and that's frustrating. That's not right. Can't really change it, but I don't know. Just wanted to put that out there, guys. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this helps you out. if it helps you look at things differently, you're welcome. If not, then I guess you just wasted 30 minutes of your life here. But thanks, guys. Thank you guys for supporting me. Thank you for listening here, and go check out racewiththeprez.com. And you guys have a fantastic day. We'll chat next time.